Okay, America, as you can see in this clip, we're beginning to see the last of the ships, pre-tariff ships, coming into our ports from China and other posts around the world. The tariff war is going to have a lasting impact. Jobs are going to be lost. Companies are going to lose a lot of capital, small and large companies. Some companies may even go out of business. This is what all of the economists who were trying to explain what tariffs would do to our country were talking about. It's just getting started. It's going to get a whole lot worse. Brace yourselves, guys. We're in for a big one. Okay, as you can see in this one, we're going to be discussing the trade war, the tariffs, and the impact they're going to have on our ports in the near future. We're going to be hearing from different news sources on what's going on with these ports, especially in Los Angeles and Long Beach. We're going to hear from the executive director of the Port of Los Angeles. We're going to start with him right now.
The front line of President Trump's trade war with China and the 145% tariffs he put on that country is right here at our nation's busiest twin ports, Long Beach and Los Angeles.
Ports here in Southern California account for 30% of the nation's exports, 40% of the nation's imports, and about half of the business runs through China. If these tariffs stay in place, experts say it will definitely have an impact on consumers.
The worst case scenario is less choice on store shelves and online buying, prices spike, and families are really becoming tighter with their budgets.
Gene Soroka is the Port of LA executive director.
We only have 7 ships in port today. Okay. Normally on a Wednesday, you'd see 12 to 14 vessels.
He says incoming cargo, everything from clothing, electronics to household goods, will plummet starting next week.
What we're seeing now is that cargo coming in from Asia will be down by about 35% until we get some semblance or signals that trade deals are on the way.
Down here at the docks, you get a true sense of the scale of the operation. One of these ships can hold up to 10,000 of those containers with goods that wind up on store shelves all across the country.
The National Retail Federation says people will soon feel the effects right in the wallet.
How much will this impact the regular consumer?
Retailers can't absorb the entirety of a 145% tariff. Talk about anywhere price increases between $2,000 to $4,000 or more for the year.
And businesses by the docks are feeling the squeeze now.
It makes me sad that we have people in power that have no clue on what's going on.
Yolanda Regalado runs the popular coffee shop Sirens. Dock workers are her best customers. Their union warning the trade war could lead to devastating job losses.
Our coffee just went up $1 a pound. That's a lot. Do we add $5 for a cup of coffee? I don't want to do that because the majority of people that come in here just want a decent cup of coffee, and we don't want to gouge them.
Pain being felt at the ports from a trade war nobody here wanted. Steve Patterson, NBC News, San Pedro, California.
Los Angeles Port and Long Beach Port. You can imagine the job losses that's going to happen with those workers over there at those 2 ports. It's going to have a huge impact on the rest of the country and the cargo that normally comes in there that's shipped across this country by way of trucks and trains. Next, we're going to be moving up to the Port of Everett Seaport, located 25 miles north of Seattle, and get a report on what's going on with that port up there.
A trainload of empty cargo containers is heading south from Everett, sent to help store a growing surplus of goods entering the U.S. from around the world as global suppliers rush to beat the looming tariff deadline.
They're pre-buying like we saw during the COVID-19 pandemic, and so those containers are now moving domestically, getting ready to move product throughout the nation in our supply chain.
The Port of Everett is actively moving 2,800 empty containers to other parts of the country. Under new Trump administration policy, most countries will pay more to export goods to the U.S. China facing the steepest hike, with tariffs as high as 145%. It's a cost many fear will ultimately be passed on to consumers.
This is not a light switch. They can just turn it on and off. the uncertainty our small and medium-sized businesses are having, or whether or not they're even going to be able to stay in business throughout the year.
Port officials in Seattle and Tacoma are anticipating a slowdown when the president's tariffs ultimately go into effect as expected. Lawmakers sounding the alarm as well.
Few people understand better than our ports that you don't need these tariffs to last very long for them to have a very big impact.
Back in Everett, port officials say they're used to adapting to change, and they're ready to weather the storm should it arrive as predicted.
I would say, looking back, when tariffs were threatened in 2018, we saw a 14% decline in port cargo, and that was just with the threat and with not as wide-reaching tariffs as we're seeing now. So we do suspect there will be impact, but really we won't know the level of that impact until the rubber meets the road with the revenues and total ship calls at end of year.
Boeing is a major client at the Port of Everett. They handle all the oversized parts that come in through the port and eventually go to the facility here in Everett. They say so far everything with Boeing has been on schedule, though a drop in that business would negatively impact the Port of Everett. In Everett, Sebastian Robertson, King 5 News.
We have been following what's happening at ports across western Washington. To see our coverage, you can text the word port to 206-448-4545 and we'll send you a link.
This serious slowdown in cargo coming in is going to happen all up and down the West Coast ports. The Port of Everett Seaport, located 25 miles north of Seattle, is a natural deep water, self-operating seaport that supports nearly $21 billion worth of U.S. exports annually, ranking number 2 exports customs district in Washington State, number 5 on the U.S. West Coast. Okay, up next in this next video, I'm gonna go back to Los Angeles and that director, but the reason I'm going back to that clip is because there's a small story of a small business who's going to be impacted by this. The lady, her store makes games, sells games and board games and everything. And this is where the rubber meets the road. This is how small businesses and these people's family and their community is going to be impacted by these senseless tariffs by this maniac. Let's see what's going on with this one.
President Trump's trade war is affecting America's ports. Container shipment bookings are down nearly 50% from a year ago. As CBS's Carter Evans tells us, shoppers may see some empty shelves in the coming weeks.
The Port of Los Angeles is the busiest in the Western Hemisphere, but now it's preparing for a dramatic slowdown, according to Executive Director Gene Soroka.
What do you anticipate happening over the next couple of weeks?
In 2 weeks' time, Carter, we'll see a drop on our import side of the business by about a third. It could be as much as 40% the week to follow. Most American importers are saying that they're stopping shipments out of China because they simply weren't going to pay 2.5 times the cost of the goods.
With a 145% tariff, a container of Chinese goods worth $100,000 will now cost importers an extra $145,000.
With information coming out of Washington seemingly by the hour, it's tough to get a line of sight on what's next. Inventory on hand right now in the United States will last for about 6 to 8 weeks. After that, shelves will be bare. We won't be able to buy as much online.
All of these games come from China.
At the Game Chest, owner Mariam Alhamami has been stockpiling toys and games that arrived before the tariffs.
So I'm buying what I think I'll sell between now and September.
You sound like a hoarder.
I feel like a hoarder. If you've seen my stores, you would see the hoarding in the back rooms.
80% of her merchandise comes from China, and board games are her biggest sellers.
Seems like you should be able to make a board game in the U.S.
It's true. It does look easy, but it's filled with lots and lots of different parts and pieces. And there's just not enough manufacturing here to be able to do that successfully.
At this point, even if the tariffs are reduced significantly,
It'll still take about 10 days to 2 weeks to get these ships back in line over in China. Then it's a 2-week trip here to LA. So we're starting to cut it pretty close with respect to inventory in the U.S.
So we might see some empty shelves even if the tariffs are brought down in the next couple of weeks.
We're running out of time on that. And if we have fewer items to select from, that's going to put a pinch on the American buyer.
Carter Evans, CBS News, Los Angeles.
As the director said, we're pretty much already behind the 8 ball. There's a lag already in cargo coming in. The shelves are going to start being empty for a while. even if the tariff war cools down and there's some kind of deal made between the United States and China, we still going to feel the effect of it. There's going to be job losses. Prices will go up. So we can just brace for some hard economic times coming. And as you can see, as the lady said, when the gentleman said that we should be able to make board games in America, yes, America, we can do all of this. It's going to take time to get that stuff back into motion. Joe Biden put incentives out there to try and get us into making chips in this country, making EV battery factories. All of that stuff was being put in place without starting wars with our allies around the world under Joe Biden. Things were looking up. Inflation was going down. Now look at where we are. We are facing some very hard times because of this ego maniac. We're going to look at one more clip and we're going to be done with this one, guys. Let's see what they have to offer in this next one.
And on the national stage, the U.S. economy is bracing for impact as the last freighter ships from China without steep U.S. tariffs are set to arrive. That means that Americans will soon feel the impact of President Trump's trade war as companies prepare for the worst. NBC's Christine Romans has the details.
This morning, growing pressure on China and the U.S. to lower trade tensions as consumers brace for impact from a new trade war twist overnight. China now saying it's, quote, evaluating negotiations and that senior American officials reached out wanting to start talks. Until now, China had denied President Trump's claims that the two countries were talking.
I hope we're going to make a deal with China. We're talking to China.
But before moving forward, China says the U.S. needs to, quote, take actions in correcting its mistakes and canceling the unilateral tariffs. President Trump has put a steep 145% tariff on Chinese products. In the weeks since, prices have risen on everything from household goods to electronics. And overnight, a new move that could affect the way Americans shop every day, the Trump administration ending a loophole that lets low-cost goods under $800 into the country duty-free. Over 1 billion of these packages came into the U.S. last year, the rule allowing Americans to buy cheap Chinese products from companies like Shein and Temu. In anticipation, those popular stores have already hiked up prices on products like clothing, air conditioners, and more are expected. The White House says the loophole has been exploited by drug dealers and that it's stifled small American businesses who can't compete with Chinese prices.
It's a big scam going on against our country.
It comes as many of the nation's big companies are revealing the impact of tariffs on their business. Apple reporting second quarter earnings with sales slightly beating expectations, but the company's shares fell more than 2% over tariff concerns. Apple CEO Tim Cook weighing in publicly for the first time.
We estimate the impact to add $900 million to our costs.
McDonald's said its sales in the U.S. fell 3.6%, the biggest drop since the pandemic. General Motors also putting a price tag on what tariffs will cost the automaker, warning investors of current tariff exposure of $4 to $5 billion. But one retail giant, Amazon, saying it has not seen shopper demand fall off yet as a result of tariffs. The Trump administration message, stay calm.
We're not going to fix this overnight, but I do think uncertainty will go away.
And just listen at that last Trump official. We're not going to fix this overnight. Fix what? Something you created. That's the Trump motto. Create a problem, get out there and try to fix it and make the people think that he done something. We didn't need to have this problem to begin with. So yes, there you have it. We are in the midst of this horrible tariff war. We're going to experience some economic pain. Get ready for it unnecessarily. I just wish that some of these CEOs of these billion-dollar companies will grow a pair. Tim Cook of Apple, Jeff Bezos of Amazon, and the rest of them. Stand up, say something. Do what you have to do for your customers and your stockholders. Try to make a difference for those people and stop kissing up to Donald Trump. It's almost that's all they can think about. How can they make themselves, put themselves in a good light for Donald Trump? Donald Trump do not care about anybody but himself and his family. it would be nice to see some of these people that has some power in this country to stand up and try to help turn things around that's going on. But it just doesn't seem like that's going to happen. We're going to leave this one here. I thank you once again for tuning in, and I'll be seeking out, bringing you guys some more news. Hopefully, we can reach our goal and get this voice out there where I can be a voice, especially in those midterms next year. I just want to grow a voice. Give me some show ideas down in the comments. Let me know what you would like to hear me portray out to you guys and beyond. Yes, I want to speak. This is why I started this channel. So I'll see you guys on the next one. I appreciate you for tuning in. Thank you. I ask you guys to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thank you.